Today, we interviewed a billionaire. Have you ever interviewed a billionaire before?
First time.
First time. What exactly is an FLQA?
And what percentage of Amazon does
Bezos owns like 10%.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
People think that you have to own 100% of something, and they won't give pieces of the pie away.
Once you get people thinking like owners, they treat the business differently. They treat the company differently, for sure.
Let's make sure that we're rewarding the younger agent. It's actually more well-rounded in terms of the rev share.
We're a family, kumbaya.
We're a family. But if you watch their actions,
No.
their actions are completely different
Agreed.
than what they're saying. So this is the part that I was tripping out. How much production would you have to do to own a piece of your brokerage?
I always ask agents, I'm like, did you go to the office? And they're like, no. And I'm like, did it matter? Let's check it out.
Hey everybody, Jose Luis Morales here and
Aaron Novello, and we have with us the founder of eXp himself, Mr. Glenn Sanford. We really appreciate you taking some time to be with us here today, Glenn. And I wanted to say to you formally, thank you very much for the opportunity, for seeing what it is that you saw, and for having the kind of mindset and the mental map that as you give away pieces of the pie gets bigger for everybody.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that is the sort of the basic secret. You saw the one slide yesterday. Somebody had the Zig Ziglar quote: "You can have anything you want in life if you just help other people get what they want."
Yes.
And that's the whole idea. That's the idea of the pie always getting bigger, based on creating ways to help more people.
Yeah, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that very big decision, which is directly in alignment with that, which is to lower the amount of FLQAs that are required in order to unlock all 7 levels. Was that part of that decision-making process?
Yeah.
When Glenn was answering that question, I wanted to break that down, right? Because one of the questions that me and Jose get all the time is, what exactly is an FLQA? And it stands for Frontline Qualifying Agent. And what it means is that if you have brought somebody to the company and they've put you down as the reason why they joined the company, then if they do at least $5,000 worth of commission dollars to eXp, right? So there's a $16,000 cap, and as long as they pay $5,000 towards that cap, they become an FLQA. And the FLQAs, the certain number of them, they unlock subsequent lines of rev share. Now, this is a very key distinction, because some of the things that me and Jose, people have been sharing with us is they think, about like Real or these other companies. And what I want to share with you right now is that Real has a different compensation plan where you must have a certain amount of FLQAs in order to unlock subsequent lines of rev share. And if you don't have those FLQAs, you will receive no rev share on those subsequent lines. Versus with eXp, you will receive rev share on subsequent lines even if you don't have the appropriate number of FLQAs. It just won't be the full amount. So if you're interested and sincerely going to be focused on agent attraction, that's a super key distinction between compensation plans.
Yeah. What I liked about that part of the interview too is I liked how you opened it up with a compliment.
Well, thank you.
So I think that's a really good way to start and I notice you do that a lot of times.
Yeah.
Whenever you start talking to somebody, you either say, "Oh, I watched this video of yours," or "I appreciate you," or "I appreciate that."
Yeah.
I think that's a gift. So just want to compliment you on that.
Thanks, brother.
The other thing that I noticed is that he said if you help enough people get what they want in life, you can have anything that you want.
Yeah.
And that's really the key to having anything that you want in life, is you're helping other people get what they want. So like, even as I transition more into rev share, what I'm thinking, hey, I'm going to help people produce more in real estate,
Which is what they want.
and that's going to give me everything that I want and need, basically. But in order for me to get to what I want, I got to help them get to what they want.
Yeah, that's critical. And the other thing that I want everybody to be clear on too is that eXp very recently made a big change. And the change was previously the compensation plan was in order to unlock all 7 levels. So in other words, in order to get full rev share on all 7 levels, you're still going to get it on all 7 even if you don't have the appropriate frontline qualifying agents. In order to get the full amount, in the past you needed 40 FLQAs. So you needed 40 agents that you personally have recruited that have paid at least $5,000 in company dollar, right? So they do a few transactions a year, and they recently lowered that to 30.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting, and what you'll see when we, go back to the video, is the thought behind that. The reason behind that is that Glenn wanted to make that more attainable for more agents, right? Which I think is awesome. And in my opinion, it's also slamming the kind of the gas pedal down, in terms of growth. And again, that goes in alignment with as you make the pie, as you give pieces of the pie away, the pie gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
That you read my mind about sharing a piece of the pie. A lot of people think that the way to make it is to sometimes even run their own company or start their own company.
Yeah.
And they'd rather own 100% of a $500,000 company versus 1% of a $1 billion
That's
company.
right.
Like what is Amazon? What percentage of Amazon does
Bezos own? Like 10%.
Of Amazon.
Yeah.
And he's that 10%.
He's like one of the richest guys in the world, if not the richest.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah.
So
same with Elon. He only owns like 20% of like his company.
And that's what I love about that. Like a lot of times people think that you have to own 100% of something, like any type of business, and they won't give pieces of the pie away, not knowing that if you give pieces of the pie away, it actually builds a much bigger pie. And even if you have a 10% percentage, like maybe somebody like Glenn or Elon or Jeff Bezos, that you're still a billionaire in that sense.
Yeah.
And now everybody's in alignment as to what the goal is. Because everyone's thinking like an owner now.
100%. And that's one of the things that we talked about, which is that what it does is it creates an environment in which all of the agents and all of corporate, they feel a sense of ownership versus having like a king at the top or a queen and they own the majority. This is distributed amongst others. And once you get people thinking like owners, they treat the business differently. They treat the company differently, for sure.
Not only that, but it allows you to attract A players as well too, because it's an A opportunity. Like, for example, like I have a broker's license. I could open up my own real estate company if I wanted to. I know agents in my market that opened up their own brokerage. And I'm like, well, why would I go through that where this gives me everything?
You can outsource the brokerage to eXp
without any of the negative or downsides of a brokerage, basically. So
that's awesome.
Cool.
All right, so let's get back to it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we recognized is that for very diligent agents that are really building, there were a couple things. One, the economy is a little tougher, so we got agents that are just leaving the business less productive. So it's harder to open up those bigger levels.
Sure.
And then two was we wanted to make it more achievable for the average agent who actually put in the work.
Sure.
And so those are the two things that we thought about. Obviously, we've got some we'll call it some formulas in terms of how we structure the sustainable rev share and adjusted GCI. And the idea was, one, let's make it a little bit easier to get to the larger payouts, but then also at the same time, let's make sure that we're rewarding the younger agent that's in agent attraction as well. So we're kind of bumping up levels 1 through 3 payouts through our AGCI program, and then using some of that other monies to go there. And it really makes it a much more democratized rev share model. And that's really sort of the democratization, so it's not just a select few, it's actually more well-rounded in terms of the rev share.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, so my takeaway from that is that by augmenting and making it easier to unlock all 7 levels, it's actually being purposeful and intentional to help more people participate at a higher level.
So he's basically giving more money away.
Yes.
What I love about this part, it just showcases how great of a CEO Glenn Sanford is.
Yeah.
I think one of the models that he has is that eXp is the most agent-centric company, meaning that they're consistently going to be making decisions that improve agents' lives. And this is one of those decisions right there. So what came to my mind is there's a lot of companies out there, or a lot of people that will say, I've got your best interest at heart. I'm going to take care of you.
We're a family, kumbaya.
We're a family. But if you watch their actions,
no,
their actions are completely different than what they're saying. So my key takeaway from here is when somebody's telling you something, yeah, listen to what they're saying, but pay attention to the actions that they're doing.
That's right.
So when I see actions like this, it tells me that his heart and his vision is in the right place for the company.
Agreed. 100%.
Other companies are increasing fees.
Yeah. Well, even then, like I heard this today, like somebody said that one of the companies might be decreasing profit share to a lower percentage.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, I'm like, okay, they are telling you that they like you. They are telling you that they want to help you. But those little decisions, like there's a guy making $1 million, those little decisions cut his income in half to $500,000.
That's right.
Because of a decision that is not really in alignment with helping the agents.
That's agreed. Yeah, 100%. And while companies are increasing fees and reducing what they give to agents, eXp is increasing and lowering boundaries.
Yeah, to make it more achievable.
Yeah, that's awesome.
We're bumping up levels 1, 2, and 3 to increase the AGI. Does that mean that you're going to get paid more on levels 1, 2,
I don't
and 3?
know. I don't know what that means.
That's something, like if he said that, that is big, bro.
Yeah.
That is almost as big as reducing the amount of agents to unlock all 7 levels. We gotta find that out. We got to find that out, because if he is doing
what is it called? The A what?
Like, watch this. Listen to this part again. And this is the part that I was tripping out when I
Let's
heard
make it a little bit easier to get to the larger payouts, but then also at the same time, let's make sure that we're rewarding the younger agent that's in agent attraction as well. So we're kind of bumping up levels 1 through 3 payouts through our AGCI program, and then using
levels
some
1,
of that
2, 3
other
through our
monies to go there.
AGCI program. What is AGCI?
a justice gross commission income. It's part of the rev share model. I just don't know what it means. So when he's saying that, what I'm thinking that means is that there's going to be larger payouts potentially on levels 1, 2, and 3. Or it means if you haven't unlocked levels 2 and 3, that they may pay more on the fact that even if you haven't unlocked the levels. That's what I'm thinking.
I think it's probably the second.
The second, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which that's still
great.
Big right there.
It's huge.
You know, like meaning if you have agents in your second, third, fourth level, like
Yeah.
without unlocking them.
That's good. But I think for us to get clarity around that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Really makes it a much more.
By the way, that was one of the things that went over my head.
Yeah.
Where when he said it, it didn't.
I thought he was
register.
referring to shrinking the amount of frontline qualifying agents, but that's a nuance.
This is
Because he said increasing levels 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Which means that he'll probably allow for more to be paid out if you don't have the full
frontline
qualifying agents. So it may not be the full amount, but it'll be more than what you were getting before.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
which
dope.
is still big.
Yeah, it's big.
Once again, it's one of those decisions that isn't aligned.
No, and your point is so interesting. It's like when you have owners whose interests are in alignment, then you make different decisions, right? It makes me think about like Vanguard, or like, where they, all of the investors in Vanguard own Vanguard. So what they do is if there is a savings, they pass it on in the form of lower expense ratios for their index funds. So we all benefit. And this is precisely the formula that Glenn and the executive team is using.
Yeah.
Which is if there's a way, they're going to give back to the owners. And 70% of the company is owned by agents and their founders.
Say it again?
70% of eXp
70%
is owned by agents and their founders. So it's a truly owned agent, like an agent company. And they're part of the S&P 600, which I don't think people really understand how massive that is, because that's an index that you can't pay to get into. You can't politic your way into it. It's just based on economics and the way a business is run. And it's a self-cleansing mechanism. So people are familiar with the S&P 500. Those are the 500 largest large cap companies in the United States. And the S&P 600 is the 600 largest mid cap companies in the United States. And when I say self-cleansing, meaning like if a company doesn't fit the criteria anymore, they kick them out and bring a new one in.
Yeah.
But because of that, what's happened is that the average volume of stocks being shared went from $200,000 to $300,000 a day to $1 million. Because now all of these funds that hold the S&P 600, they have to own eXp. So when you put those all together, you have a company who is owner, kind of has an owner mindset. And if there is a way to redistribute more to the owners and provide more benefit to the owners, then they do that, versus other companies, as revenue has gone down because volume's gone down, they are constricting. They're putting more barriers and boundaries around, sharing, and they're also raising fees.
And that's what I love about the company.
Yeah.
What I love about it is the actions that I see them taking are for the agent.
Period.
And I don't see that at any other company. My question to agents, if you're considering like maybe switching brokerages, my question is, how much production would you have to do to own a piece of your brokerage? For the owner,
like the actual mothership of the company.
Yeah. How much production would you have to do to actually own part of the mothership? Not the small brokerage, the RE/MAX independent franchise, but the actual RE/MAX Reology.
Yeah, exactly. And for most agents, it's not
possible.
It's not an option. It's not possible.
Yeah.
Good.
Which it is here.
What's the democratized rev share model? And that's really sort of the democratization. So it's not just a select few. It's like it's actually more well-rounded in terms of the rev share.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
What I wanted to ask is, how did you come up with this idea of like eXp? Like where did it get started? Like was it like how did you come up with it? How did you go about designing it? Like what was that process like? Did you hire consultants? Did you already have this type of background?
Yeah, I've been involved with probably 5 or 6 different network marketing companies over and I'd been mentored by some really good mentors in that industry, some guys who are top money earners. And so I'd learned a lot about the industry, and I always found, and just like you can see here, when you actually create an aligned compensation model, it brings out a different type of version of yourself.
Yes.
Because you're actually thinking about the possibilities of what this could become, rather than it being all about working for a company. You're now working in partnership with a whole bunch of people. And it just creates a different level of enthusiasm.
And it creates, it makes me think about Warren Buffett, where you have owners that treat things as though they're an owner. And it's a completely different dynamic versus if you feel like you're an employee and you don't have any ownership.
Right. If you don't have upside, why are you going to actually put the time in?
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and that's that. He said, if you don't have ownership, why are you going to put the time in? And that's very true. Where most agents at the end of their working year, their calendar year, all they would have to show for it is a piece of plastic and maybe a hat.
And a pat on the back.
And a pat on the back. Hey, good job, brother. And what's interesting
We're so proud of you.
Yeah, but here's what's interesting. So we went through that evolution where we were very motivated by significance. So maybe for like a little bit, okay, that feels good. Like I'm the man. Yeah.
I posted on social media.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Everybody goes, congratulations.
Yeah, where what's amazing and unbelievable, for those who are watching, you may not know, I actually used to own part of an office and I sold it back in order to participate in this opportunity. And what's amazing is if I would have been at this company for those 15 years, and I was a top agent there, I did 2,000 transactions, 100 homes a year for 10 years, 200 deals a year twice, I would have walked away with like $500,000 to $600,000 in stock. Instead, I have some nice pieces of plastic and some nice little hats.
You would have walked away with more, because at that time, it was a penny stock.
Oh gosh, it would be millions.
So if it was 15 years, the stock is worth 21 per share. It would be millions of dollars, Novello, because it was a penny stock back then. Right,
which is like unbelievable. So that's the question. Like, what he's saying right there makes it very clear to me that he infuses the company intentionally and purposefully, not just with words, we are partners, we are in this together, but an aligned compensation plan in which you get rewarded with stock and ownership in the company, plus we're going to allow you to participate in the revenue that gets generated back to the company.
Yeah. The other thing that I noticed about this is he said that when I asked him, like, how did you come up with these? Like, I've had mentors in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And the reality is that sometimes people's egos don't allow them to go out and find people that have already done. But almost anything that we want to do in life, it's already been done by somebody else.
That's right.
I struggled for 6 months without selling a property until I found my first mentor. Then when I wanted to get to the next level, I found my second mentor. Now what we're doing is we're reaching out to people that have built large organizations, and we're getting mentored by them. But I can't stress the importance for viewers out there that even somebody like Glenn, who is a billionaire, still has mentors in his life, and that's what it takes to build something large, to have people that are maybe a couple of steps ahead of you.
Yeah.
You know, that you're willing to listen to them and you're willing to do whatever it is that they say. One of our agents yesterday was like, should I open up a property management company? I said, don't do it. Please don't do it. But people did that for me. People, a long time ago, I wanted to open up my own brokerage.
It's like,
don't do it. Just stay in production. You're you're gonna be a lot better off with a lot less headaches. And I'm so grateful for that. Now, here's another thing. He said aligned compensation model.
Yeah.
That is so good.
Yep.
What does that mean to you, though?
So again, model? What that means to me is it's not as though it's feudalism. Because what feudalism is there's a king or queen at the top, and they go out and recruit, they go out and sell a region, let's say. Those regional owners, they go out and sell individual franchises. And then those individual franchise owners go out and recruit agents. The agents are at the bottom. They either never own anything, ever, or they own a small piece of something that's shrinking as time progresses and actually isn't that valuable. And all the money flows back up to the top, right? Where here, the compensation plan is in alignment. So it's in other companies, the executives get stock options, not the people that are actually doing the work, the agents. So in the majority of real estate models, 65, 70, 80% of models that are not, cloud-based in some way, the agent does all the work, but they never actually own anything. And what I'm aware of is you never get rich you never get rich selling time for money. You only get rich by owning equity. And what most agents are doing, renting their business. So at the end of their working year, all they have to show for it is the commissions that they've made. And maybe again, a hat or a piece of plastic. Where here, an aligned compensation model means I'm rewarded like an executive. When I perform, I get stock. And that continues and it's perpetual as long as I am productive. What's also true is I am rewarded in being able to participate in the revenue that gets sent back to the mothership if I invite other people to our platform, because all I really see is brokerages are just platforms to process transactions. And what the internet has done is caused all of these middlemen and unnecessary expenses. They're starting to get pushed out, right? That's the experience. So what they say is like, okay, now if you help bring people to our platform, we will share in a portion of the revenue that they send to us. So that's alignment. Now, like, we're actually in business together. Not saying we're in business together, we hold hands and kumbaya, like, not that. But now the actual money is aligned with my words of saying that we're partners.
Yeah, and what I even love about it is, even outside of eXp, if you're a business owner watching this, how important the compensation model is for the growth of the company.
Oh yeah.
If you have a compensation model that is structured to benefit both the agent and the owner of the company, there's no limit to what you can do.
100%.
As long as you have an aligned compensation model.
Yeah, I've had, coaching clients where they have like a super A+ player, and the A+ player is starting to get like a little, and what I tell them is like, listen, you need to make your ecosystem big enough to where that person's dreams will exist inside of it.
Yeah.
And if you don't, they'll leave.
Yep.
Like, well, what do I do? I'm like, well, maybe like a profit share model or something.
Yeah.
Where once you make a certain amount net profit out of the business, anything after that they participate in, because they need to feel a sense of ownership.
But I want to hold on to everything.
That's right.
I want to keep everything.
But then that goes back to that if you give pieces of the pie away, the pie gets bigger. But that's such a mental kind of mind game.
And they get stuck in this like, all right, bring on a new agent, I get him to produce, he produces, he leaves. Same thing. So you're in this like cycle.
And in that cycle, it's like I'm really actually not, it's more about what you can do for me instead of what I can do for you.
Yeah.
And it's more about like how much can I get from you instead of how much can I give you.
Yeah.
They're just, it's a completely different mental map. Now, we both know people who do that, but what happens is they cycle through all their staff like very quickly, within a year or two, like everybody leaves. And it's because I think part of the reason it is, there's many reasons, but part of the reason is because there's not an aligned compensation plan.
I agree.
Yeah.
Have you ever read the book Blue Ocean Strategy by any chance?
I have scanned it, and I've done a Blue Ocean workshop. Probably in 2012.
That's kind of what I thought about eXp when I read that book. I thought like they have all the principles of Blue Ocean, where you eliminated all the things that aren't really needed to run a brokerage, and you created a better model that basically serves the agents and serves everybody instead.
Yeah, I think one of the premises of a Blue Ocean strategy, there's a principle of a book called The Entrepreneur's Manual I read in 1983. And it was about, if there's a problem that's not being solved, and it keeps on coming up over and over again for yourself and others, and you can think of yourself as a focus group of one, if there's not a solution out there, and there's enough people that have that same problem, then all you need to do is go and solve it, and you won't have any competition because obviously it hasn't been solved.
That's right.
And so the idea was, one, in 2009, everything was bricks and mortar, but we had high-speed internet everywhere. The future of real estate brokerage and business in general, if you thought about it, even in 2009, I don't really care who it is, they think 30 years out, are they thinking there's going to be more offices, or are they thinking about everything's going to be on an app and it's going to be totally mobile? Well, 30 years out, it's definitely going to be there. And so ours is why don't we build the brokerage of the future today? Knowing full well that a bunch of the infrastructure is not there yet, but if we start building it now, then when the infrastructure really works, we'll be there.
Yeah, and it takes a tremendous amount.
So that's the definition of like visionary, right? So he recognized that the high-speed internet into the home would allow for people to work remotely. And he also recognized that if you project out into the future, it's like, what's the probability that everybody will still be in bricks and mortars? And he's like, it's very small. So even though it's not perfect now, we're going to start building it now. And as the infrastructure gets better, then we'll have this windfall and this unbelievable growth, which is what's happened. And I also think that what we experienced in 2020 in terms of COVID just supercharged that. We went from 20,000 agents to almost 90,000 agents now in 2.5 years or 3 years, whatever that is. And what I like to say to agents all the time who are still stuck in the mental map of like an office and that sort of thing, because I'm aware that some people require an office in order to get kind of outside of their home because there's distractions and things of that nature. At the same time, that's a super easy fix. I mean, it's not that expensive, right? It's like an investment in yourself and in your business if you want to do that. At the same time, between 2020 and let's say May of 2021, I always ask agents, I'm like, did you go to the office? And they're like, no. And I'm like, did it matter?
Nope.
And they sit there and they're quiet and they're like, no, it didn't matter. I'm like, no, you probably had a great year. I mean, because there was lots of volume, you probably did lots of transactions, made a bunch of money, and you did everything remotely, didn't you? I mean, if you needed to speak to somebody, you texted them. If you needed to speak to somebody, you sent them an email. You had a phone call, right? And you met people on Zoom and like that sort of thing. They're like, yeah. I'm like, so you were already doing this model, you just didn't call it that. Does that make sense?
What I got from it as well too is he quoted a book. He said the Entrepreneur's Model, and he quotes a couple of other books later on. Most people, once they graduate from high school, never read a single book after they graduate.
Sure.
What I love about it is that he's an avid reader and constantly looking to improve himself. And I think that reading books is like heavily underestimated by our society.
Yeah.
Like somebody who has done something really well, whatever it is, whether parenting, sports, business, they took all of their knowledge, put it in a book, and you can read it for $19.99.
I know.
Or for $10.
Hey, and people are like, nah, it's too expensive.
Yeah. Or they won't do it. But even then, like those principles that he learned has allowed him to build something really big.
That serves so many people.
That serves so many people and changes so many people's lives. But it's funny, I wrote down the word visionary as well too, because that's exactly what he was doing when people thought it was crazy.
And as we're thinking like, oh cool, my internet's not like AOL anymore. Like this is faster. Oh cool, like I can DM quicker, or like I can do this faster. He's thinking, wait a minute, this gives the capacity for people to work remotely anywhere. And if he projected out into the future, what's the probability that in 30 years we're still gonna have all these brick and mortar offices? Like it's very small. But it takes, what I said to him is it takes a tremendous amount of internal conviction to see something that other people don't see, and then to move aggressively in that direction. Because you get tons of hate, tons of pushback, like, no, you're wrong, like that. Because as humans, we don't like change, because change makes us feel unsafe. But he saw it, was convicted, and then went 100% full force in that direction.
Yeah. I think one of the challenges for us and even some of the viewers is, what is the future going to look like in 10, 15 years?
Right.
And like, what can we do to basically change something? Because I think that there's going to be so many changes over the next 10 to 15 years, and there's going to be so many new billionaires and
millionaires and
trillionaires created because of all the changes that are happening. But I think that's an interesting thing, that he started building the future 11 years ago, knowing that was going to happen. Unlike all the other companies that are now coming into it, they're like, oh, that's actually a really good idea.
Yeah.
Let me try to do something similar. But the fact that he had that 11, 12-year, 13-year head start
is unbeatable.
Unbeatable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Amount of conviction, because when you're saying that, people think you're like an alien from Mars.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Or people think like you're crazy. So I was gonna ask you, like, was there ever a time when you you casted this vision where you were like, man, like, maybe this isn't gonna work out, maybe I should throw in the towel?
Fortunately, we never had a month where we had fewer agents than we did the month before, so we were consistently growing. The only reason why we would have thrown in the towel was if we couldn't get to a certain number of agents, we couldn't see ourselves getting there. But as long as we saw ourselves getting there, which we did that whole process, that it was really just a matter of fate, that it would just take place naturally.
It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I wanted to acknowledge you for is, because I was with another company that you were with. I owned part of an office.
Right.
I sold it back. And what's so interesting to me,
what company was that?
Is from a leadership perspective, I see you all the time.
Right.
In other companies, it's like ivory tower, never get access to them. They never like kind of are amongst the people. I know I'm imagining that's very intentional for you, no?
Yeah, it is. Another book that I read back in the 80s was In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters and Robert Waterman. And one of the principles was be close to the customer. And there was another concept called management by walking around. And it was all around, if you're in an ivory tower, you don't actually know what's going on.
No.
And so it is important that I'm in the trenches every day, having conversations, figuring stuff out, helping solve the real challenges that are going on at the front line.
And I'm wondering, is that your natural disposition, or is it something that you have to like?
Well, I'm an introvert by nature.
Yeah.
But it's easy to operate as an introvert when you're around a whole bunch of people that you know, like, and want to be around. So that makes it a lot easier. But my natural tendency is, if I didn't know, and this wasn't
your company,
it was my company, I might not feel that as comfortable doing it.
Yeah, I understand. That's awesome.
Yeah, so this idea of him making himself available and being amongst everyone, eating with them, being at the gym with them, walking around, before the event starts. And we've been to a lot of these types of learning events before. Truthfully, I've never had the experience where all of the speakers, all of the head executives, they're amongst everyone all the time. And it's really refreshing. I've never experienced that before. Usually it's like they're in an ivory tower, or if you want to get access to them, you got to know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody, and it's special, or you got to pay to get access. Where here, they're just, walking around and having conversations with us.
You know what it reminds me of? There's a movie about how hot Cheetos were created.
Oh yeah, I saw it.
It's so good.
Super good.
But it reminds me of the fact that sometimes people think that at their current position, if they're a janitor, if they work at Subway, or they work at Target as a lower level employee, that maybe they don't have the same opportunity that an executive has. But they actually have an even better opportunity because they have direct experience with the customer.
Yep.
And so by them doing that, it allows them to keep their pulse, which sometimes what happens when you get too high up in the ladder, you lose your pulse in the marketplace. But what they're doing is they're keeping their pulse in the marketplace to be able to see, okay, what are they saying? What needs to be changed? How can we make this better? Which is the opposite approach that most people do. Once they get to that level, they they disconnect, which allows them to not be able to adjust as fast as eXp adjusts.
And not have access to direct information in terms of what's going on, what's the pulse, what's the vibe, how are people feeling, and that also therefore ends up creating a situation like you're saying where you're not able to adapt fast to any changes.
And if anybody's watching this and knows Richard Montañez, tell him I want to interview him.
Tell him we'll interview him at any time.
All right, make an intro down below.
One of the things that I admire about you, I feel like instead of hiring people that have never done what you want them to do, you go find people who have already done it. Like Michael Valdez, when you brought him onto the company, he had already done it for another brokerage where he grew their international presence. Have you always been like that, where you go out and find the right people, or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is my hiring feedback. I get 50% of my hiring right. I just wish I knew which 50% up front. Okay,
right?
Because I've had to go through a number of people to figure out what I think is a pretty good formula today. But we've hired people who were experts that we brought in that on paper looked amazing, and they were the worst hires. In other cases, we brought in generalists who didn't know the industry, and they were great because they didn't have to unlearn bad habits. And so there was kind of a mix. Now, I think the company is now firmly footed in the direction it's going, that we can now bring in experts who will adapt to us rather than asking us to adapt to them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, Michael told me that everything essentially rises and falls on leadership, where in other areas, like internationally, you'll have one leader in place, it'll be like, okay, you'll put another leader in, and that leader will produce in like 6 months what it took somebody a whole year to do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it does. And it happens time and time again. Like,
everything rises and falls on leadership. And one of the speakers today said leadership equals rev share. I think that's very true. And it's a reflection of leadership with regards to how quickly it grows, how quickly your organization grows. So he is saying, as the executive of a $1 billion company, that 50% of the time he gets those decisions right, he just doesn't know which one. And that once you do find the right person, though, and I can attest to this, when you have an A+ player and you find that one person, it completely changes everything, like the whole organization.
Yeah. What I was most impressed in that is you ask him a question and he understands what you asked him so quickly and answers exactly what you asked him. And I was like, watching back that replay, I was like,
solid.
He broke it down quickly, answered it. So
it's good.
Even a good leader, there's always going to be a better leader. There's always so you always got to be continually searching for the next leader, the next leader, the next leader, because we all go through bell curves of like production and leadership. Like I'm probably somewhere in the peak of my leadership prime
at the moment.
At the moment. So, but in 10 years, we want to have other leaders coming up because so we're always going to be looking for what's that next generation leader. I mean, last year Leo Perea joined us, and amazing guy, and so I see him as really next generation leader. 40 years old, was #1 team in KW for a while, built a debt fund, went on to found Remine, sold that. Now he's with us.
Yeah.
And so where do we find these next generation leaders? On the technology front, we've got a guy named Seth Siegler. Again, early 40s, super sharp, and we've got another guy who's the senior, Shoaib Ansari, who's been at Microsoft. He's been at all these big companies, but eventually he's going to want to step out, and we're going to have to see who is the next generation leader. So always looking for next leaders, but then if you got the wrong leader, one change can change everything.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah.
I feel like that's your gift. Like even you put John Tsai in leadership of Canada.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a leader in Florida, 100 and something agents, 20 or 30.
So what I got from that is he said that sometimes different leaders are at different times, meaning that he's always looking. It's not something that is like stagnant. And a lot of times, even in business, a lot of people think that you set something up once and it's always going to stay there. But it's not. It's something that's constantly evolving. And if you're constantly evolving, constantly adapting, constantly changing, that's really the only way to continue growing, because a lot of people have trouble adjusting. And I think that's one thing that they're doing really well, even with the leaders. Like, so even if you have like an A player on your company, that A player may not always be the A player.
Well, and that A player has a life cycle.
Yeah.
Like he's saying, like he said, I'm at the peak of my kind of managing skills where he's at the moment. 10 years from now, he'll be in his 70s. Yeah. So perhaps he won't be at his peak anymore. So they're always looking for that next generation of leadership, because Jeff Bezos said he's aware that 100 years ago, Amazon, the probability that they'll still be in business is very small. But their job as a company is to prolong it for as long as possible. And a key component of that is leadership and continuing to cycle in new leaders. And that's true with what we're doing. I mean, we've hand-selected people to be here at this event with us that we believe can build to 100. So they're leaders within the organization. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're doing.
Yep.
FLQAs, 24 FLQAs. He actually mentored me for the last 10 years. Did 200 deals as an individual agent and 100 plus deals for like 10 years in a row. So like somebody that's like,
his eyebrows. Yeah, his eyebrows. As soon as you get 100 in a row, his eyebrows.
I would get
we're looking. We're looking.
Yeah, awesome. Can I ask you one last question? Like, what does your life, like a day-to-day, look like for you now, like as a CEO? Like, do you travel a lot? Are you in one location?
I travel a fair bit, yeah. But my day-to-day is, I
go against the wall.
Get a run in, jump on some emails, some communication, jump into a few meetings. Probably once or twice a week, there's something strategic that we really need to make a decision on. So I'll kind of make some of those sort of decisions. But I live fairly remote, so it's just me and my significant other, and then I go to events.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I have one final question for you, because you actually put me on Bio.
Right.
So I'm curious, how's that going for you, that whole journey? I know you made a radical... Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Let's go. All day. Yeah, it's terrific, man. Well, listen, we really appreciate you taking the time.
What's the future for eXp?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, we're growing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think, next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be in the 300,000 to 500,000 agent range.
Let's go.
300,000 to 500,000 agents. There is no company right now in existence that's even close to that. That's twice the amount. Even if you go with the low end number, that's twice the amount of the largest company currently. And I think he's right. I think he's true. What he's saying.
He's right.
That's true. Yeah, I know he's right, because in the next 10 years, 50% of all agents will be with cloud-based brokerages. So that's what tells me how enormous this opportunity is, because people come to us and they're like, oh man, it's too late. I wasn't there at the beginning.
Or I want to join this other company because I want to be there at the beginning.
Hey, and I'm like, it's too late. I've helped 142 agents join the company in 13 months. It's not too late. If anything, it's like early.
Perfect.
It's perfect timing. Like they've tested it out, they worked out the kinks, and now that growth curve is enormous. That's super exciting.
Not only that, but that's 3 to 5 years. In 10 years, it's 1 million agents.
Yeah, that's right.
Which means we're only a 10th of the way there, which means if you're an agent and you're considering joining this company, there is still so much upside, meaning there's about 920,000 agents left that are going to be joining the company.
That's right.
I don't know about you, but for now, I only want 15, of that.
15,000?
Yeah, of that.
Yeah.
I just want a small piece of the pie.
That's about right. Sure. Hey, piece. And you know what? Why not?
Yeah, right.
Why not?
In 2007, I helped a father and son buy a home that they identified. I made $18,000 for way less than 10 hours worth of work.